Hello, everyone. Me and my brother, Pastor Chris Times, we're going to talk about recovering from unhealthy relationships and starting over, part two. Our professional facilitator will not be able to join us on. Speaking of Counselor Jennifer Kane, she's not going to be able to join us, and Sister Natasha will not be here tonight either. But we're going to have an informative program. First thing I want to tell everybody is on April 19th at 12 noon, we are going to be talking about generational trauma. And generational is meaning over many years, your grandkids, they carry on the legacy, and it's either positive, negative, or it could change in that way. And we're going to talk about generational trauma and how it can affect a whole generation of family members. Brother, share more about that if you got time.
Yeah, there's a phenomenon that basically is happening, and it's been happening for many, many years. Um, and basically, it's called epigenetics. Uh, Epigenetics is basically what it sounds like. These are genetic changes in our DNA that occur from past trauma. So trauma from your parents were passed on from their parents and so on and so on. So if you go all the way back to slavery, basically, in the 1800, really in the 1600s, all the way to 1800s and beyond, and then you got Jim Crow. You've got all of those Jim Crow laws, and we're still living with that today. Even this new Trump era, discrimination and whatnot, all of these types of trauma uh, cause genetic changes in people's DNA, and it could be passed down uh, just like any other disorder or disease. So that's what that is. And basically, if you have diabetes in your family history, or heart disease, or asthma, or cancer, or arthritis, um, or many other genetic disorders, um, those can be turned on like a light switch, given the right amount of stress and stimuli uh, from your environment. And so that's what we know to be true. Uh, and and so that's kind of what we're going to be talking
And that is April the 19th, which is coming up in a couple of months down in Galveston. So everybody, just set yourself up to have a nice time. Come down to the beach and then come to an informative program and make a whole weekend of it. And we look forward to informing you and to an extent entertaining you, because we want to make sure that those messages that we are sharing uh, have an impact. So look forward to that, and you'll see more messages about it online. So that's generational recovering from generational trauma, April the 19th at the Marmo Center, 2121 Market Street in Galveston, Texas. And we look forward to informing and providing you with a beneficial experience. I want to just give one example, Brother Times, on generational, how generational can happen. I was talking before we came on about how Budweiser, the beer company, started in about 1858, I think, and they created a generational wealth and dynasty that, of course, lasts to this day. But it started back then. Now,
about.
black people of course, in 1858 were in slavery. They didn't have the opportunity to do that by law and by every other situation. So you compare those two upbringings, and you can see how the situation that one was in and that the other one was in totally created their destiny in that context. So that affected their generational mindset. Now, today, we are trying to change that, but the new rule that is happening is saying getting away from DEI is saying, okay, you all have had enough opportunity, and we're taking that away because we feel everything is fair. Now, that is a big question whether everything is still fair, but that is what the new rule is emphasizing. Everything is fair, and nobody needs any kind of special arrangement. So that'll be a debate for another time. And on March 6th, we're going to have a conversation about DEI, the death of DEI, and its effects for the Black community. So you can look for that in the future. And that is a conversation that is happening everywhere. But I want to talk about relationship starts with yourself. Would you agree with that? Your relationship starts with yourself. Now, like I just mentioned, the things that happened in the past, as Black people, it has an effect on what you feel about yourself and what you can do. So if you have that trauma still in your mind, and it makes you feel differently about your opportunity or what you can accomplish, those are some things that you have to find a way to overcome, if possible, to have the best way about yourself, have the best feeling about yourself. For instance, we all know that drugs, overeating, alcoholism are things that are bad for you. However, how many people know it's bad for them, but still they partake in it overwhelmingly too much? Now, they understand that it's not good for them, but they still do it. I understand some things are not good for me. I still do it. So that's the battle that they have with themselves. And I tell people all the time that, yes, it's well and good to understand what it is that you are doing wrong, but then how do you stop it? And how do you change it? So that is the first question. How can you overcome, like the Bible says, the things I do, I believe it's in Romans, the things I do, I don't want to do. The things I don't want to do are the things I do. And as a pastor, you may know that scripture, but overall, can you just comment on that aspect of life?
Yes, you've got a lot of things that 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 really kind of work on people as far as their, you know, what what besets them, what causes them to stumble. You've got a lot of things that occur in people's lives that will cause them to second guess, am I making the right decisions or not? And that can come from anything from relationship choices to what type of job should I get? Is this a good fit for me? And if you make historical mistakes, we all do, on based on, hey, the given knowledge, maybe you don't have enough information, or maybe you have what you think is enough, but you find out through learning that you could have made better, more informed decisions on, say, dating or getting a job or whatever the case may be, um, if you were given the sufficient information. So sometimes we just lack the information, and with that comes lacking the tools. How can you build a house unless you have the proper tools? You can't. And so, one thing in counseling I try to give my clients is, identifying the proper tools, and then going ahead and getting them the skills so that they can learn how to use those proper tools once they're put in their hands, and so those types of things are important. And I think that that's something that, society we have to look at and go on. And then the other piece is, not judging ourselves, not being so hard on ourselves for making a mistake or what we perceive as a mistake. So that's one of those things. And the other thing is you can't know everything, and we can't judge ourselves so harshly. And in this world, we tend to do that, judge ourselves incredibly hard, and hold ourselves hostage, based on past experiences. Maybe somebody lied to us, didn't give us the right information, or we just didn't seek it. Maybe we overlooked it. You know, maybe we had some type of expectations just weren't met. And so, with all of these types of scenarios, we tend to learn, right? We tend to make mistakes. And this is the other piece. And I know in America, it's one of those things we don't highlight enough. Just because you failed at something doesn't mean that you're a failure. If you fail at something, really, that's just an opportunity to succeed. We don't look at it that way. We don't teach it that way. Society makes light of that and really tries to ridicule you. But everyone who's ever succeeded in anything, they've got a string of failures, quote unquote, prior to that break, even in business or in anything else, like that seminar that we're doing. So you just got to keep on keeping on, as they used to say. Um, don't let the enemy trip you up. That enemy could be your next door neighbor, the guy down the street who's jealous of you, and that you're looking forward to doing some things that they couldn't perceive of, or don't think they have the ability to do. And that's the other thing, Brudy. You can't share your vision or dreams with just anybody, because they have people out there who will stomp on your dreams and try to kill your dreams because they don't think that they can do that, you see. And my grandfather used to call it that crab in the bucket syndrome. I know you've heard of that, where one crab almost makes it free out of the bucket, out the 5-gallon bucket, and the other crabs reach up and pull that crab back down, you know. And so that's
And
that's
all
life.
of us have seen that picture, that drawing of that happening.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I understand it, and it's a constant thing to self self motivate yourself and self inspire yourself, because you got so many things around you that can try to take you down. And we talking about relationships, and relationship with yourself is first and foremost the thing that you have to protect. Like the Bible says, it says, out of all things to be safeguarded, safeguard your heart. Because out of
Hmm.
that can come the, I forgot the word it uses, but basically the power of life
Yeah.
is comes from that aspect of yourself. Uh, our professional counselor Jennifer, she gave us some points of relationships, and we talking about recovering from unhealthy relationships. And she said one of the first points is, what are the key indicators of a healthy relationship? She said 93.4% of individuals in relationships report mutual respect, and 89.4% value honesty and openness. Uh, I want to say, as far as that, I have seen also reports, though, that women, 80% of them and this is not scientific, and but just watching different segments on the internet and what their comments are. So it's not scientific, but I'm gonna say it. And they 80% of them stayed in a situation where their mate cheats on them. But when they don't cheat, they tend to be more unhappy or get divorced. Now, I don't know if that is true, but I've seen reports of that. Now, we've all heard the things that uh, the woman does not like a boring relationship and so forth and so on. The boring guy doesn't necessarily end up in the relationship. I'm kind of throwing these comments out here, but it's a if you're out there in the audience and you want to comment on this, please chime in, and I'm gonna look at your notes and bring them back. But is there anything you want to say on that? And we don't want to go too deep. I just want to say some things and bring about some conversations because we're not going to settle the man and woman relationship thing on our conversation. So I'm not trying to get in trouble in that context. Go ahead, brother.
Well, this is a deep and complex topic for sure. Men and women definitely think differently. We think differently about everything, right? And the other thing is that we think differently about relationships. Expectations are a big thing. Most people don't talk about even in premarital counseling, and I've done my share of it. Um, you try to talk about expectations, but the truth is those are very limited conversations. The expectations really need to be discussed are around relationship. Basically, how are we going to raise the children, right? Do you agree on corporal punishment? Do you agree on what type of punishment, right? Do you even agree on punishment, period? You know, uh, are you a helicopter parent? How you choose to, how were you raised? And does that jive with how I'm raised and how we want to raise our kids? Do you want kids? Say, you know, um, even if you don't have the ability to have kids, you might have nieces and nephews, right? Do you want to raise them? How do you treat? Do you even like children? You know, these types of things are important to talk about before you get into the, put the ring on my finger, let's get married talk. And so, if we're honest about those things, just to name a couple, finances we know is one. Just how we fight. You know, do we fight fair? Of course we should, but do we? Not always. Most
Well,
of the
you
time,
said,
not.
do we fight fair? You have to define what fair is.
Yeah,
Or do you both have the same view of what fair is? What is
that's
fair?
right.
What is not fair?
That's right. Because people see different things growing up. You know, they're witness to all kinds of things. And so, yeah, and this is not a gender specific thing either. Women can be just as dirty, even more dirty than men and fighting, and when it comes to settling disputes and so forth, women have a very long memory, and so we have to really look at expectations. What does that look like? I always, in marriage counseling, I always set the parameters, Rudy. This is what a fair fight looks like. I model it, and then I tell the clients, hey, this is what the rules are. Do you agree with the rules? Yes. Okay. Well, then this is how we fight. And then, you check back. Um, well, how was it? Well, we had a fight, but you know, Sally Sue over there didn't follow rule number 5. You know what I mean? She brought up some stuff that, was from 15 years ago, and we said we weren't gonna do that. This kind of stuff. So you have to, set the parameters. No character assassinations when you fight and so forth. You got to set set it up right so that when you do, and by the way, fighting is healthy in relationships. Most people don't understand that. We call that rupture and repair. That's the foundation of any relationship. So if
And
you,
I
uh-huh,
was just gonna say Jennifer calls it. She makes sure she mentions boundaries. Be clear on the boundaries. Try to get to, okay, this is my boundary. Uh, in initial conversations of relationships, try to make sure you establish what the boundaries are, and then you know, okay, this is how far I'm comfortable with, and so forth. And the other person may not be comfortable with that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's true. All that's relevant. Boundaries. I might be easygoing and might like to kiss in public, but my mate may not. You know, my mate may not be comfortable with XYZ. So these things have to be discussed. Even with just how do you live around each other, there are boundaries there. That should be discussed. When the door's closed, do I just walk in or do I not? Just all kinds of things that you may not even think about, you know.
Yes.
But and a lot of it, Broody, is about learning because you can't think of everything in the beginning.
Sure.
Um, all you can do is set a foundation. But as you learn each other, truly learn each other, then you start. Well, Dr. Sue Johnson calls it the dance. So you start learning the dance, right? How do you interact or interface with one another as a husband and wife, right? They call that the dance. She does anyway. And so it's all based on emotion. That's the EFT focus, emotion focused therapy. And so the dance is important. And when you're doing a dance, you have to be coordinated. You have to understand your partner, and your partner has to understand you in order for you to do the dance appropriately, right? Or else you're going to be all over the place and it's not going to work.
Let me share how important it is for uh, us to try to get our relationships better. It says individuals in supportive relationships are 50% less likely to die prematurely than those without strong social connections. It's so important for our health. Yeah, we've heard of people dying from loneliness. That
Mm-hmm.
that that is a true thing. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard and know of people who have died of loneliness, and it does not just mean they didn't have any people around them. There are people that interact with people every day, but they're still very lonely, and
That's right.
it's a very important thing. Uh, Also, it said open and respectful communication is key, with 90% of individuals citing honesty, openness as essential. I think, of course, that's always been essential, but more and more we're kind of getting away from it. Now, there's a void that people want to gravitate to that, but with the new thing of the internet and all of the different things, it's so hard to maintain that. And now, for me, it's a part of my core, and for a lot of people, it's a part of their core. But we don't know who to trust sometimes in conversations. And you got scam in a day. I get like 20 scam calls or texts in a day.
Hmm.
So all
Hmm.
around you, you got um, so much things happening where people are trying to, take advantage, lie, whatever they can do. So that's the new world we live in. Um, how can people find, maintain, and seek those type of healthy relationships? Uh, what would you say on that? I would say you have to model that in yourself and maintain no matter what is going on. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, you have to uh, definitely maintain, and a lot of it is understanding who we are as individuals. And if we understand who we are, then we're able to provide a lot more to the relationship than if we're just, what is that old saying that, I'm looking for my other half. Well, yeah, you're looking for your other half, but the truth is you have to be a whole person in order for you to pull or draw another whole person. Nobody can complete you. And all these things we
Yeah,
come up with are just fantasies, honestly, to
right,
set
right.
us up, for failure because there's no such thing as somebody completing somebody else. I like what you said about the dying of a loneliness. It's like dying of a broken heart. All that's real, and people do that. And so we have to understand our limitations. You know, God didn't make us to be alone. What did He say to Adam? To Adam, it's not good for man to be alone. This is what God said, our Creator. And so we have to be mindful of that and know that okay, our Creator said it's not good for man to be alone. Well, that just means just that, doesn't it? It means that it's not good for us to be alone. You think about everything in nature. Everything in nature has an opposite. And you think about how even great white sharks get together and on occasion and mate, you think about how the animals in the jungle respond, how they live in families, monkeys and giraffes and whatnot. You think about how the elephants are notorious for that, have long memories, they live in family systems and so forth for generations, right? You think about orcas, notorious, highly intelligent beings who are skillful hunters, and they stay in their families for their entire lifetime. When they suffer a death, they actually go into mourning, much like human beings. Even trees, even trees are able to communicate and do through their root systems, through electrical impulses, because they need to connect with other trees. See, this is the kind of stuff God made everything to be in harmony and to have balance. And so there's a guy named Chuck Mishler, Baruti. He's dead now, but he's a theologian and astrophysicist, among other things. And he said that God brought the planets into the planetary systems two by two. He didn't even bring them one by one. He brought the planets here, literally brought them here two by two. And they can tell because of the meteorites striking one side of a planetary body and not the other on planetary systems. And they know that from Mars and they know that from the moon and so forth. They can see it. And so, yeah, so God is that meticulous that He don't even want the planets to be by themselves. To where when He created them, He brought them and put them into place in pairs. What does that say about us?
That's very deep. First, you talk about the living energy of trees, and we often don't think about a tree as a living object. Yet, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see a tree is just standing there. Now, we don't recognize that especially a large tree, it grows over time, but it's such a stationary object.
Mm-hmm.
And but yes, it's growing all the time. And then you're talking about plants. Excuse me. You're talking about planets. Yes, plants part of the tree, but planets being 2 by 2. And so basically, you're saying planets are the entity. We live on a planet. It's a living object also in that context. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and we just think of it as being there and not, having a life or energy of its own, but it does, and that's a deep thing. And I think of relationships in the context that they can create. We talking about generational. You could create from a relationship something that can live on and on and on and on. And that is the way that it was created. So it's such a powerful thing. I tell people that if I don't necessarily feel an energy in a situation, I'm not just going to get involved just to have somebody.
Right.
I don't believe in doing that. I've had several ladies that have been, wanted to, check with me and get with me, but I felt no energy. And
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to waste their time in that context. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not cordial. I'm not open to conversations, because sometimes you may not feel that energy, but after a while, you do feel some energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was open enough to do that, but I'm certainly, and especially at my age, I just turned 63. So, you know, I can be okay not necessarily having to get involved. Of course, I've been in a relationship, I was married and then had kids. So I have been through those aspects of life. But I speak for a lot of people. I would love to have a relationship today, but I don't necessarily have to. Going back to those things that's so important: respect, honesty, and the other things that are involved in just human interaction that are important. And I think, like the cycle of the tree and the cycle of the planet, those things are important in all contexts. I
Mm-hmm.
really feel that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
this is our 20th episode of Minding Our Mental Wellness, and relationships are very important to your mental wellness. But it goes back to, as I'm saying, relationship with yourself. You have to establish that. You have to make sure and keep checking with yourself. I constantly double check. Okay, was I respectful in this situation? Now, I don't go overboard and just second guess everything. By the time you get my age and you really have went through the cycles of what is your best self, you kind of know that, okay, I normally treat people respectfully, and it's an aberration if something else happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I have gotten to that level. But about relationships, are they harder today because of all the things going on? Would you say?
I think that they are, and there's a lot of gender confusion going on. What I mean by that is back in, say, my grandparents' age era, there were roles for men and women that were very clear, right? Fair or no fair, they were super clear. And actually, society uh, had it situated, where the woman stayed home pretty much and the men go out to work. That's and one set of grandparents, my grandmother on my mother's side, she never worked a day in her life outside of the house. My grandfather did all of that. He was, a businessman his entire life. And then, of course, my dad's parents were totally different. Uh, my, grandfather on that side worked for the city and so forth, and he raised cattle and so forth. He was a cowboy. Whereas my grandmother on that side of the family, she was a domesticated worker. So, you know, they both had jobs, and so that kind of stuff, the way they lived those different families because of how they were situated, they were set up differently. See, so I think that in those contexts, the roles were different within the families. You see. And so, whereas my mother's parents, my grandmother stayed home, took care of the kids, watched out for stuff, cooked, clean, all that stuff. Whereas in my dad's parents, in their house, it was more of, well, my grandmother on that side, she did all the cooking and cleaning and everything, but she also worked outside the home. Uh, but she did other things too, like Papa Times was my grandfather's name. She would have his supper on the table. They call it supper, for lunch. And he came home and ate that and went back out to work every day. You're not going to find that anymore, hardly. I mean, you might, but
Let me comment on that a little bit. One of the things I see is that um, ladies initiate divorces much more than men. Uh, that is a statistic. And one of the reasons that it seems to be is that ladies have like you were saying, okay, the man is supposed to go work and provide and pay all the bills. I take care of the home, so forth, so on. But that is not necessarily the reality of the environment that we live in today. It may take both incomes or two incomes to be able to live. Um, and it's a different world, and maybe men and women have not necessarily adjusted to it. And there's a lot of different things from the trauma of all the things that we've been through, especially in the Black community, as trying to have relationships. There was a time when men did not were not able to get jobs as much as the woman, and it had animosity back and forth between the different sexes. So there's a
Mhm.
lot going on, but if you comment on women maybe getting divorced more than men, and then what do men need to do to have better relationships with women?
The divorce issue is interesting. I can speak from a personal perspective. My mother divorced my father. And when I asked her why did she want to get divorced, she had a convoluted response. Basically, um, he wasn't romantic enough, and he wasn't this, and he wasn't that. But the truth is, he was he was the backbone of our entire family. He provided financially where school teacher, she didn't make but, you know, $13,000 a year most of, her career growing up. And even later on, she didn't make that much more money, but daddy made two, three, four times her salary, and he was able to put five boys through college and whatnot, and live a very middle class life. So, you know, she could have never done it without him. But uh, the sad thing is that her dreams, from what I understand, weren't being met. There was some substance there that she felt that she was missing, something emotional, something, you know, transformative in her mind that she wasn't getting from my dad. And so therefore she developed, and this is something to be cautious of. She developed a true hatred for him, and she developed animosity and so forth. And so, and her belief systems about how he treated her were skewed. So this goes back to how do men communicate and how do women communicate. Totally different. See, and if the two parties don't understand that, Baruti, you got yourself a world of problems and a world of hurt because one person might be thinking, oh, this person really loves me. They're satisfied with everything that's going on. Why? Because I'm the man of the house and I'm paying all the bills. And when Mama want to get a Cadillac, I buy her a Cadillac. If she want to live in this big old brick home, I buy her, excuse me, her a big old brick home. If she want this dress or this ring, or I can go get it. You see. But, you know, at what cost? I'm working all the time, 12 hours a day, you know, overtime and whatnot. But, and, you know, from the man's perspective, he's still doing what he's supposed to do, right? Now, from her perspective, he's not meeting her needs because why? He's not there for her. He's working, right? He's doing all, yeah, he's meeting all of her physical needs and the needs of the children, but yet now her emotional needs, Baruti, are not being met. When she wants to do whatever, make love or whatever the case may be, have a conversation, he's asleep, he's tired. You see what I'm saying? Because he's working all the time, trying to take care of his family, doing what he thinks is necessary. So all of a sudden, now you have animosity. And then back to when we fight and how we fight, Rudy. Um, she might decide that she wants to pick a fight just to spot. This is something we got to talk about too. She might decide to pick a fight just to create some spark into the relationship. Okay, Rudy? So she'll come home and she'll act up. You know what I'm saying? Or she'll do something that'll get on his nerves just to get a spark, just some kind of excitement, you know. And so it depends on how he responds. He might be a calm, cool, collected cat that might just, you know, let it pass, you know, or he might decide that he's going to get aggressive. I mean, people have all kinds of expectations. And so, I mean, I've heard women say, certain women say, that he didn't fight for the marriage because he didn't get jealous when he knew I was seeing this other man or whatever the case may be. And so, you know, you got all this stuff going on. Men think different from women and they have different expectations. You can be talking about the same thing and talking about two different things at the same time. So it's very complicated, but it can be reconciled. And that's just coming to the table before things get bad now, Bruce, and just saying, hey, this is what I mean by this, or just being authentic and honest with each other. Hey, honey, I don't I can we talk about last night, you know? I think that I feel dejected when you roll over and go to sleep and don't kiss me goodnight or whatever. You know what I mean? There's things that we have to talk about when it's on our mind and with consideration of the other person, right? Respecting their boundaries and so forth. Hey, I think that you talked to me a little too harshly this morning, you know? Let's talk about it. That kind of dialogue is generative. It will help the relationship. But what do, Baruti? We talk about other things, or we want to
We go
fight.
talk to our friends. We go talk
Thank
to our
oh,
friends instead of talking to her We
Yes.
talk to our brothers or somebody else instead of having a firm conversation with that particular person and being very clear and understanding. Maybe if I say something like, hey, I'm going down to the street, going to the store, and you have an expectation. Okay, I'm going to get some margarine, butter, and some of the things that you want, but you didn't communicate that. You know, so communication is the most important thing.
Yep. 100%. That will solve a lot of problems before they get started.
But we get into our emotions, and you don't want to talk sometimes. You're mad at the other person
Hmm.
and different things, and and already men and women, we may not have the same way of communication, and that could be a problem. I know I've done several times. I have said things, said a word, and the other person interpreted it totally differently. Have you ever had
Right.
that with text? You text
Oh,
something, and
oh.
then they thought I totally thought something else. I mean, in our recent uh, in our recent uh, group that we had, that
Hmm.
happened very deeply. That happened
Hmm.
very deeply. But if the other person already has something in mind that they think you mean, and unless you're able to clarify it,
Yep.
it can go to something very that you didn't mean. So
Yep.
communication is very important, and you got to keep communicating to resolve it. So, but once it gets to the point where you can't communicate, it's hard to resolve anything.
Yeah. It's real hard because now you're talking about trust violations. You're talking about, and then people bring up old stuff that don't have nothing to do with you, especially if you're not married to them, or even if you
Right,
are.
right, right.
You know, they bring up stuff their husband's done to them, and
Because
that's
because they're bringing in all of their trauma, experience, everything that
yep,
bad happened to them, all the negativity, and
yep,
it's hard to compete or to work help work through that because that
that's
is
right,
stuck in the mind. So both people have to make a real concerted effort, and
that's right.
that's not possible. It's hard to resolve things.
That's absolutely correct, and that's where that being honest and transparent comes in. Let's
Yeah,
communicate. Let's not be so worried about making somebody upset. Let's try to get things out on the table. I call it being authentic. You know, and then that way we might be upset at each other for 5 minutes or an hour or 30 minutes or whatever, but
or maybe even a couple of days.
maybe even a couple of days, Broody. But you know what? Get past that and move on because now I know what you thinking, and you now know what I'm thinking, and then we
Yep,
now
and if you're gonna
yep,
be honest about it, you know both of you are not perfect and things can happen, but
yep,
we've talked about it, we resolved it, and not gonna bring it up anymore, and we can move on.
that's right. We
Uh,
can move
hey,
on.
brother, we are at the end of our conversation. The key that we want to share with everybody is communicate. If you care, communicate, keep communicating, and try to, outlast that and keep talking about it. And so that you can resolve whatever is going on. That is the key to everything. The possibility of resolving it can help you survive.
That's right.
All right. I just want to say I thank Brother Times, and April 19th, generational trauma, recovering from generational trauma in Galveston. Come and have a very good time down there on the beach. It should be kind of warm or getting warm at that time, April.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And The program is at the Marmo, which is 2121 Market, and it's a nice facility. And we're gonna have some snacks and different things. And it's at 12 o'clock, so you can come down there and hang out on the beach in the morning and come to the program and go back to the beach. So
Hmm.
set it up, enjoy yourself. You need some ideas, contact me or contact Times. We're on the internet, and we look forward to seeing you for our seminar in Galveston. And
That's right.
Brother Times, you got something to share about that?
No, just we're looking forward to folks coming out and everything and participating and getting educated and relieving some stress, being on the beach and enjoying the Strand, and we right there, 2 blocks off of Strand Street, and you can just have fun and learn at the same time because we've got a lot going on in our families, and I really believe that when you tool up and you're able to deal with things in a much better and healthier way.
Well, thank you. It's been an informative program. Our next episode will be March 9th or 16th. We haven't decided yet, but we'll have another discussion about some aspect of mental health. And we're going to welcome back Jennifer. She wasn't able to make it tonight, Jennifer or Natasha. And we look forward for them for our next episode. So I thank everybody. And if you have something that you want to share with us, contact either one of us. We're on the internet, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
All right.